Spectrum wants to hear your views. You can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. I'm your host, Edmond Kizito. On Spectrum tonight, why are reports of rebellion persisting in Uganda despite the current democratic order? A security brief to all resident district commissioners, authored by Security Minister Muruli Mukasa, has implicated FDC and the Subi pressure group in acts of treason. The brief claims that FDC and Subi are using arson as a tool of terror and could be behind several market and school fires that have been reported in several parts of the country. The same brief indicates that the two groups are recruiting youths into rebellion and that they are being trained in parts of the DR Congo. These claims come at a time when several UPC party supporters have been arrested in connection with a claimed rebellion. The opposition, through the Activists of Change pressure group, have stepped up their campaign under the slogan, "Change is coming," so as to cause regime change. And today, FDC President Dr. Besje and Kampala Lord Mayor Arius Lukwago were arrested and interrogated at the Central Police Station. In the past, government has linked opposition leaders to acts of treason under rebel groups such as the PRA and the ADF. The opposition have distanced themselves from these reports, saying they are not interested in armed insurrection and prefer to use peaceful political processes. The opposition continues to claim that the political freedom, which was fought for in the 1986 Bush War, is now under severe threat. These sentiments have been re-echoed by Brigadier Henry Tumukunde and Major General Jim Mwezi, both veterans of the 5-year Bush War that brought President Museveni to power. So tonight on Spectrum we ask, why is government continuously linking the opposition to acts of subversion, and how far true are suggestions by the opposition that the political space has shrunk considerably in this country? Our guests tonight, Hon John Kazoora, FDC Secretary for Defense, also a Bush War historical. You're most welcome, Hon John Kazoora.
Thank you very much.
We also expect to be joined by Mr. Kintu Nyago, Deputy Principal Private Secretary to His Excellency the President. Mr. John Kazoora, very briefly about your background. When did you join the Bush War that brought President Museveni to power?
This was in March 1982. I was 23 years old, just as I put my last first stop on my exam. I headed to the jungles.
So you joined it very early, 3 months after it started?
No, but yeah.
About 1 year and a month after it started.
Yeah.
Why did you leave the NRM?
Well, there were issues that took us to the bush. You recall that there was a precursor to NRM called UPM, Uganda Patriotic Movement. It had its slogan of unity, clean leadership, unity, and peace. The human rights were being trampled upon, and our leader then, Yoweri Museveni, mobilized us, especially the youth, the intelligentsia in the university, and said if this election is rigged, we shall go to the bush. And when the results were contested, we went to the bush. And he also said after we won the war, he would establish an independent electoral commission. So we went on those premises. When we were in the bush, we made what is commonly called, very few now remember it,
the 10-point
program. And number one on the 10-point program was good governance. And he said all these can follow. I remember number 2 was security. And in that order, number 5 was building an independent, integrated, self-sustaining national economy. Number 7 was elimination of all forms of corruption. So we look back, and when we reached here, Actually, what people forget is that Kampala fell on the 25th.
That's true, the 25th of
The
January.
25th of
The same day Idi Amin took
Idi
over.
Amin took over. Now, when they realized that it is going to have connections with the historic of Idi Amin, they did not announce until the 26th of February.
Yes.
Then we were in Ruviri.
6th of January.
Of January, yes. And we were in Ruviri. Then Museveni said, now we have captured power. For how long do you think we should stay? And some people said 12 years, 8 years. He rebuked them and said, you mean I have wasted all this time with you in the bush? What do you want to do in power? And he said, as far as he is concerned, 2 years were enough, and that we'd hand over power to civilians. It was only Amanya Mshega who said, but sir, in 2 years we would not have built enough cadreship and would be handing over power to the very people we fought. So that was the compromise of the 4 years. And you will recall that before the 4 years ended, then there was the expansion of NRC.
Yes.
That's when Waswaziri Twaura walked out of parliament.
1889.
Yeah, in protest. But also, later President Museveni said that he wrote a book, What is Africa's Problem? And he said it is leaders overstaying in power. Recently, I saw him now changing that he has now become an expert, having stayed long in power. He also said that what will I be doing at the age of 55 in power, that I will retire to my farm in Rwachitula when I still have strength to look after my cows. And you would recall in 2001 manifesto, 8 times he wrote in that manifesto saying that that was his last term.
2001.
And one, yes, 2001.
That's 11 years ago.
Yeah, 11 years ago. So all these contradictions inevitably. And let me tell the listeners, when Besigye declared his candidature in 2001, all the MPs of the Great Ankole called him in the boardroom of public service. That time, the Honorable Manya was the Minister for Public Service. All of us were there, the Right Honorable Kachega, the Honorable Maria Matembe, Nasasla, all of us, the late Bijirwa. And we told Besigye, why really don't you respect this man? Since he has written that he's leaving in 2006, why don't we be patient and give him a good send-off? And you recall, a number of us did not support Besigye at that time, 2001. And Besigye looked at us with his cynical laugh and said, you mean you people at this time, you still think that Museveni will leave in 2006? And all of us were shocked. Kateria said, what do you mean? You mean he's going to abrogate the constitution? I said, no. But then they said, I'll be the first to fight him. Nasasala said it cannot happen. Then Besigye said, okay, lady honorable members, if it does not happen, I do not be a son of my father, Fefe. You remember when now Right Honorable Katega had left the movement, in his book he said that this is having the last laugh.
So you don't think, you think the only way to fight the president is to bring back the democratic rights, to remove President Museveni?
Not really, not as a person. We tried when we were still in the movement. We talked. You remember the departure of Besigye is when he wrote in 1999 there, and wrote to the chairman of the movement parliamentary caucus and said, these are issues we should talk about internally. I was in parliament, and President Museveni said, no, these will not be discussed. Now, if they are talking of the right forum, where else would Wesley have talked from? In Uganda People's Congress boardroom, he was saying, let us talk inside within movement and solve these problems. Probably if we had addressed those issues at that time, the situation would not be as bad as now. And when you talked that in the bush and the other years, whenever you would criticize anybody, including the president, and that was called positive criticism. But as we progressed in governance and in power, whenever you criticized, now you'd be called subversive. I usually give the example of Brigadier Henry Tumukunde. When he was running the errands of the president, he was the blue boy. But when he said, no, I think some of these things are not going correct, now he became subversive. He was arrested, taken to prison, and all that. And they say you are serving army officer, you should not go on air. But you know you have hosted serving army officers. Why haven't they been charged? You know, this kind of selective punishment is also a big problem.
All right.
So to your question is that it's not actually Museveni per se, but he has shredded the institutions of good governance. I'll give you an example. When the court ruled on the referendum, a certain minister mobilized border borders with dry banana leaves, commonly known as Sanja,
yes,
to go and demonstrate against the court. And that minister was not brought to order. And fast forward, when they ruled on the PRA suspects, the court was surrounded by security. And you remember what the principal judge, the Honorable James Ogora, said, that it was the
rape of justice.
The justice, in the temple of justice.
Yeah.
Now, if you are talking of good governance, how can one arm of government attack the other?
All right.
You see what is happening in Parliament now. Parliament makes resolutions, and these resolutions are overturned by a caucus of a political party.
All right, we'll go into detail on those issues. Listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1 tonight. Why are reports of rebellion persisting in Uganda despite the current democratic order? Guests tonight, you've just heard from one of them, Hon John Kazoora, FDC Secretary for Defense, also a Bush War veteran, the Bush War, the 1981-86 Bush War that brought President Museveni to power. We've also just been joined by our second guest, Mr. Kintu Nyago, Deputy Principal Private Secretary to the President. You're most welcome, Mr. Nyago.
Thank you, Edmond. Good evening, listeners.
Mr. Nyago, why is the political climate so tense now, not too long after an election, in your own analysis?
To begin with, it's not tense. I mean, I've seen tense situations. For example, those who want to see tense situations, you could visit Syria. In Syria or Afghanistan, that's pretty tense. Or go to Kordofan or Darfur. That's really tense out there. In Uganda, it's not tense at all. For instance, I'm here with Hon John Kazoora. We are going to have a very amicable discussion. Not that we believe we would accept each other's views, but it's going to be very amicable, and that's what democracy is all about. And this democracy is a result of the struggle of Ugandans, which Hon John Kazoora was part of. And I would say that there are situations in which the taking to arms is viewed as legitimate. As for example in 1980 or 81, when Kazoora left Huma Hall and opted to join the NRA, that I think, in my view, the situation then was legitimate. For instance, Joshua Mujenyi, who was celebrated 10 years since he died, was going to be arrested for just associating with the UPM. Bakuru Mpaji was imprisoned in Machin.
Yes.
No, he was a lecturer of philosophy.
Okay.
Bakuru Mpaji was a lecturer in philosophy at Makerere University. Joshua Mujenyi was in political science department. But simply because they were in UPM, they were going to arrest them without warrants. Bakuru Mpaji was arrested and taken to Machin in the death chambers without a warrant.
Right. And
he was only saved by the NRA. Hachigungu went there and bought his way out or something next to that. You see? But I mean, now people can say whatever, and so long as it's within the law, and many of them say things that are not even within the law, they go back and sleep like babies.
All right.
So the environment in 1981 was so constrained that there was no way you could engage politically. But now, in Uganda, I mean, armed struggles take place in many other countries. The Basques, for example, or even in France, somebody was shooting people dead, and I don't know if he has been killed by the special forces now. But in Uganda today, we have one of the best constitutions in the world has ever seen. The constitution we have is one of the best the world has and has ever seen.
Yes.
But not only that, we have a government that has a clear commitment to constitutionalism. That's why people are enjoying their political space. But now, let's take the issue of, say, serving army officers being selected or whatever. What I have noticed myself is that we have been in a transition. We have had the situation before 95, we have had the situation just after 95, and so forth. While in my understanding, in my looking at things, while army officers were very active before 95 and during the movement system, I think even though we do have army officers in parliament, they are much more constrained. They are not constrained, but they are much more, they restrict their engagement politically.
Right.
For example, you would never see even those in parliament, the UPDF officers in parliament, coming out to support openly the NRM positions.
All right.
For example, or they are participating in NRM parliamentary caucuses. They don't do that.
Okay, Mr. Junior, I would like you to bring it down to the current situation. We've had elections before. This particular one, after it happened, there's been patent tension. Police stations are being guarded by soldiers. There have been demonstrations. In the past, the opposition went to court. Now the demonstrations today, opposition leaders were jailed, were put in prison. Some of them didn't even have charges levied against them. A policeman apparently has been killed. Some people think it's a bullet, some people say it's a stone. It's not yet clear. How do you explain this?
Let me tell you one thing. In these democracies in the West, say the United States, anybody, whether he has been a war hero or whatever it is, you touch a policeman, you try that, you touch a policeman in the United States, you push him or whatever, you might get a bullet in your head. Just touching a policeman.
Yes.
Not even stoning him. Like they have done here. You touch a policeman on the
You are in trouble.
Big trouble. Big trouble. But here routinely. So even the debate should be, should the opposition employ extra legal means to express? Because look, this country is not only owned by parties that own a handful of seats in parliament, or the opposition. It's for all of us. And my understanding of liberal democracy is that you can only enjoy your rights so long as you do not infringe on the rights of others. For example, stoning policemen.
All right. Okay. Security Minister Mrudu Mukasa said FDC and SUBI are involved in rebel groups. Why would rebel groups be springing up now? That is, if they have been proven. We assume he's saying the truth.
Not that those people may not have those ambitions, but I think it's just a storm in a teacup. Because look, we have really seen insurgencies in this country, people like Konyi, for example, and so forth. But I mean, these so-called PRA that went to Congo and were eaten by the Hemas and so forth, these are just a waste of time.
What can be done to bring down the tensions?
What tensions? If you want to see tension, go to Syria, go to Damascus.
Well, you don't have to wait for it to escalate to that level.
It won't, because we have a legitimate government that got 70% in the polls just last year. The FDC, for example, tell me how many chairmen they have of LC5s or LC3s. Just name three. They have hardly anything. So we have a very legitimate government, a government that has programs for this country to transform the agriculture sector, to transform Ugandans from being in the subsistence sector. Now look, Ugandans, as I speak now, are some of the people under this planet that enjoy most democratic space. For example, take the LC systems, which Mr. Kazoora himself played a very key role to establish in the Little Triangle during the 80s, in the early 80s with Haji Chugong and Lieutenant Kanasi.
Yes.
The LC's systems liberated the peasantry in Uganda.
Right.
For the first time since creation, a peasant can either stand for election
or choose their leader,
or vote for a leader,
right,
or campaign for a leader. Since creation, since Adam and Eve. Otherwise, Since Adam and Eve, they have always been told who their leader is without any consultation.
Okay.
And tell me which other presidents on this planet has got those rights.
Mr. Kazoora, somebody will say, if this is a minority party, they lost an election, now they're fomenting trouble.
No, but there are some issues my colleague here raised that there is political space now. I want to tell you that this morning, the elected mayor, the Lord Mayor
Yes.
of this city, went around inspecting the roads under construction. He was accompanied by the Honorable Member of Parliament for Kampala,
Nabila
Nabila Nagai. And they were joined by the FDC party president. And these people are now in jail. Since 2 in the afternoon, we have been running up and down. When he's talking about Joshua Mugenyi, Bakurumpaji, today, the whole day we didn't know where these people were. And I told you I am in charge of defense and security. I went to the Central Police Station and I asked the commander, Kawesa said, where is my party president? He refused to tell me. A number of MPs, a number of lawyers went there and said, please, we have got a right to access our people. So if my colleague here calls that political space, then political space means something different.
All right.
Now, he talked of...
Okay, I guess we'll go for a break. We'll come back, then you can pick that point from where you left it. Listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. We'll be back after the break.
Special fares to the US, London, China, and India, with extra baggage allowance on selected flights. To book your flight, contact your local travel agent or call us on 041-7800-900 or book online at qatarairways.com/UG. Qatar Airways, world's 5-star airline.
Terms and conditions apply.
John, Mike, and I, we go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends, seeing potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He's just who he is. Special.
So here's to men like John, who make a difference, who enjoy Nile Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the source. Nile Special. You've earned it.
Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90 is brought to you by Stanbic Bank.
Welcome back on Spectrum tonight. Why are reports of rebellion persisting in this country despite the current democratic order? Our guests tonight, Hon John Kazoora, FDC Secretary for Defense, also a Bush veteran, and Mr. Kintu Nyago, Deputy Principal Private Secretary to the President. You'll be able to call in and contribute to this discussion. Mr. Kazoora, as we pick up the point that you are developing as we went for the break, I would like you to tell us why you think this is likely to end.
Because my colleague here made a number of distortions. For instance, he said that in the movement system of governance, the soldiers could be tolerated. Now, under political parties, they are restrained. I recall very well when we were voting on the removal of third term.
The removal of term limits.
Yes. And there was an officer called Bogere. Kana Bogere abstained. And I think that was the best an army officer could do.
Yes.
From there, the president said he will have to answer to his constituents
for abstaining.
As we talk now, since that time, Bogere has been on Katebe.
Undeployed.
And that's what means the intolerance I'm talking about. And my colleague also talked about, you see, we got the 70% in the last election.
68.
He said 70. I say, fine. But how was that 68% got? And he recalls very well. President Mubarak had also got over 80%.
He got, I think, only 93.
90 something. Only to be removed violently.
So is that what you want to do here?
No, I'm saying situations. The percentage on the paper does not reflect actually what is on the ground.
Okay.
And also, he says, you see, there are like F4C, Activists for Change.
Yes.
And I'm a founder member of F4C.
Yes.
I can talk authoritatively. When we started this, we said ours was going to be a non-violent political disobedience. And on all rallies, Kintu knows, people have demanded for guns, the youth especially. They have demanded for guns. And we have explained in public and said, we have used guns before.
And you don't want to use them again?
Because the guns did not solve the problem.
But today apparently they stand as policemen today, right in the middle of the
I have just been to Nyago in the mortuary.
Yes.
And I saw that man.
What happened?
Edmond, there is no way you can use a stone, go through your head, in the forehead, and burst out.
You've seen, so you think it's a bullet?
It is certainly a bullet.
He died of a gunshot wound,
yes.
from what you saw. You saw him physically.
Oh, yes, I'm telling you. And you can even say, they say investigation at this very stage are still going on.
That's the police.
This is the police statement that has been given to you. They don't know how this police officer was killed. But also, let me ask you, Edmond, was it F4C that killed people during the Kayunga riots, the 47 or so, who were killed along
27?
No, that was the figure that Kintu wanted to give.
Go on.
Was it A4C that killed people when the Kasubi tombs were banned?
Mr. Nyago.
But I didn't. You see, I'm a disciplined.
Go on. Okay.
I got your point. I could have interjected, but I said let him make his.
Conclude it. Then
yes.
move forward.
So, this rebel group is not new. Let me tell you what happened. After the 2006 elections, our group went and engaged government. I remember Honorable Rugunda was the Minister of Internal Affairs.
Yes.
We met him with General Tinyefuza and General Kare Kihura. And we told them, look, let us have a communication. We want, because we know, I have worked with these gentlemen, I know what they are capable of doing. And we said, if there is any information, let us share it. We did that until Honorable Rugunda was removed. When they brought in Chivejinja, that communication broke down.
Yes.
So it caused problems. I will tell you what. We got information that a certain minister was recruiting youth somewhere in Chivoga, and giving them money and saying we shall pretend to come and attack you, and then claim that you are recruited by FDC.
All right.
We gave this information. I called Honorable Rugun. He gave us an officer, a senior commissioner of police called Womanya.
Yes.
He's very senior.
Yes.
This boy came. Womanya came with taping gadgets. He taped this boy. What Womanya did not know was that we also taping the boy. And he told all this story.
Yes.
And the amount of money he was being given.
All right.
Now, Womanya said he was going to come to us. He never did. 2 years.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
Now, if they were sincere and we shared this information with them, why didn't they come to us? Recently, I was watching Parliament.
Yes.
I saw the Right Honorable Amama Mbabas saying that F4C is an illegal organization. Now, You know, Right Honorable Amama Mbabas, he has been they call it the
General of ESO?
Yes, of ESO,
Minister of Security,
Minister of Security,
now Prime Minister,
Minister of Defense, Minister for Prime Minister. And I wondered how people could not challenge him in the floor of the House when he says F4C is illegal and he sees it every day.
All right.
What does he do? Okay. Now, if Mururu Mukasa, who was recruited by Amama Mbabas, he's now Minister for Security, he's saying that we are bandits. Remember what they used to call us? Bandits.
This is bandits.
Bandits, yes. What doesn't Mururu Mukasa have to apprehend us?
All right, let's hear from Mr. Kintu Nyago.
You know, but why is he impatient? I listened to him.
He's patient. I tell you if it's
Yeah, you gave him the time.
Last 5 years I've been listening to senior colleague Nyago Kazoora. But that said, you know, the fact is that what the tragedy we have in Uganda is that in as much as we have a very liberal democratic dispensation and a leadership that is clearly committed to constitutionalism, the tragedy is that I think because of our history, I mean, we had 60 years of colonialism plus Idi Aminism or Boteism. I think the residue of that is still reflecting in the political class. Because, I mean, to have, clear democracy, you must have Democrats. So that in as much as we have a clearly very democratic constitution, very democratic dispensation, our leadership committed to constitutionalism, some leaders are yet to learn what democracy is all about. They think that rioting is a democratic act, which is not. And it is not just a Ugandan phenomenon. You go to places like America, there are people like the Ku Klux Klan.
The white supremacists.
Yes, they behave in a similar manner, or anarchists in other environments. Now, you find that somebody talks about the issue of the temple of justice. What
the Mamba invasion.
What if the state had information that anarchists were about to storm the Supreme Court? Because the obligation of the state is to protect.
Keep law and order.
Exactly. What if the state had that information?
So they sent the black mambas to keep law and order.
Even in America, Al-Qaeda types are in Guantanamo Bay.
Yes.
You see? And the judiciary has never resigned in that country.
Where do you think this is likely to end, Mr. Nyago?
Which is likely to end? What?
Well, the standoff.
There is no standoff. Look, a government with 70% in parliament, 90% in local governments. What standoff? There's no standoff. The standoff is a figment of imagination. It's a storm in a teacup. But the point I was trying to make, we have seen worse times in this country where there was a standoff. For example, there was a man called Honorable Sebastian Sebugwao who used parliamentary privilege under Obote II to question facts that why was it that Oit Ojok was chairman of Coffee Marketing Board.
CMBL.
And by the way, Oit Ojok became chairman of Coffee Marketing Board after killing the person Obote had put there. And nothing happened to him. That's impunity. And also, as chief of staff, was de facto head of the Uganda National Liberation Army. On the floor of parliament, and these were facts.
Yes.
That same evening, around this time, Sebugo was killed by Ojok's henchmen, the Sokoros and others.
All right.
Agetas. They killed him. They shot Sebugo.
A
member of parliament. So you have seen such situations. Now, whereby you find that under Idi Amin, the Chief Justice was pulled in broad daylight, mid-morning, from the Chief Justice's chambers and dragged down that temple of justice.
And was killed.
And no judge resigned. No judge resigned. You see? And he was taken in broad daylight, Benedicto Chwanuka.
Yes.
Never again to be seen for having issued a verdict which was based on due process.
Right.
I think there was some white man who wanted in prison and Ben Chwanuka used.
He said no. He released set him free.
Yes. No, not a friend. He was just
set him free.
Yes, he set him free. Set him free. So we have seen such. Now clearly the judiciary in Uganda is one of the most uploaded in the Commonwealth.
All right, let's look at
Our parliament is regarded extremely highly in the democratic world.
Okay, you paint a contrast there between the old times and the current.
But even in the current, we are performing extremely well in democratic practice.
Let's talk about some of these issues that make that storm in the teacup in your own words. Henry Tumukuna and Jim Muhwezi. At one time, Besigye spoke when he was still inside the NRM. Now, two veterans of the struggle, Henry Tumukuna and Jim Muhwezi, have said that space is narrowing. They cannot express themselves anymore. Does this mean anything at all?
They're entitled to their views, and those are their views. Like I've got mine.
You don't think it's necessary to have a dialogue between the government and the opposition?
About what?
Well, political space.
There is dialogue. I mean, Mr. Kazoora spent 5 minutes telling you how he has been dialoguing with government, with Ndugurugunda.
Well, he says
even as I speak now, there is dialogue in Lake Victoria Serena, again headed by Ndugurugunda. So there is dialogue. This government has even dialogue with Kony. Not these people who want regime change by stoning policemen. They have dialogued with Kony, and yet the president knew that Kony won't come to anything. But for the sake of principle, for the sake of this country, they have dialogued with Kony.
You think FOC is fomenting rebellion? The FGC, Suvi, you think they're behind it?
I think they are good mimics. They are attempting to mimic what we talked about in Egypt, and it won't happen here.
There's not going to be an Arab Spring here.
Arab what?
Arab Spring?
I don't know about that, but it won't happen here.
Well, listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. You can have your say right now. Topic: why are reports of rebellion persisting in Uganda despite democracy being seen to persist? You can call in now. Our number 0414-348-111, 0312-260390, 0312-261390. When you call in, please tell us your name and where you are calling from. Spectrum, hello? Hello?
Henry Bazira is my name.
We can only hear you. Can you speak out loudly?
Henry Bazira is my name, and I'm calling from Kampala.
Your name is?
Henry Bazira.
Henry Bazira?
Yes.
Yes, please go on.
Yeah, I'm interested in the discussion that is going on, but I just want to help my friend Nyago. I think he's using the word a figment of imagination. I think he still has the same thing. He's living in a figment of imagination. I think we need to look at the realities on the ground and not take issues back to historical perspectives. Yes, they may have a meaning, but I think what is important is look at the situation as it is today. And so, to assume that the demonstration is not a legal thing, the FOC are not legal, they should arrest them. The demonstration is legally provided for by the Constitution. And so, for citizens to express themselves is also a constitutional right. To say that the rebellion in 1980 was legitimate and not a rebellion now is unfair. Thank you.
Spectrum, hello?
Hello, good evening.
Yes, sir, your name?
My name is Twine.
Your name? Yes, go on. Twine.
I just have a simple question to ask Honorable Kazoora. Can he actually, in good faith, differentiate for us the difference between a riot and a demonstration? And he tells us which of the two is legitimate, and he also goes ahead and tells us which of the two is FOC doing. Thank you so much. Yeah, good evening.
Hello, please tell us your name and where you're calling from.
Tinka Rajab.
Come again?
Tinka Rajab.
Rogers, yes?
Rajab, not Roger.
Rajab, please go on.
Well,
please go on. Okay.
Hello.
Hello?
Good evening, Edmond.
Please tell us take it up. Please tell us your name.
I'm AM as usual.
Yes, AM.
Thank you for hosting the guest. Mine is very simple. I want to salute the guest, but one I want to ask the assistant from the president's office, Mr. Nyago. During that time of Sevugwa, what were you doing by then? Thank you.
Well, would have wanted to avoid personal questions, but maybe you'll answer it. Spectrum, hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir, your name?
Good evening.
Good evening, your name?
I'm Charles, I'm calling from Nansana. For me, I agree with Nyago that the Arab Spring cannot happen here. Just as I still believe that President Gaddafi is still the president of Libya. Thank you.
Spectrum, hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir, your name?
Stephen Mukwaya from Kazo.
Yes?
Yeah, I just wanted to submit my simple discussion about the political space in Uganda. I think the opposition is taking it a bit lightly. If like for example, the Lord Mayor went to do his own work of supervision, why did the other colleagues follow him up? Did he invite them anyway? So that is the question. I mean, we need to be serious. You cannot just come from nowhere and you want to join the other party. Why? You should ask yourself, I have other responsibilities. Why can't I go into other things instead of joining the Lord Mayor? I think the opposition should think about that instead of bringing chaos in the city. Thank you.
Spectrum, hello?
Hello?
Yes, sir, your name?
Hello?
Your name, please switch off your radio and then talk to us. Your name? Switch it up and then talk to us. Your name? Yes, sir, your name? Okay. When you call in, please switch off your radio some distance away from it.
Good evening.
Good evening, your name?
My name is Dickens.
Dickens, yes?
I'd like to ask you, Major Kazoora. At this point, for me, any country in this world where a riot or a demonstration which has become riotous has taken place and then the government does not respond, or where the police in this world have directed or have instructed you don't use this route, but so you insist and then the police keeps on just walking at you. I want you to say just one country in this world. Thank you.
Spectrum, hello? Okay, let's get back to the studios. Kanoka.
Yes. Let me first reply to what
I'm sorry, I couldn't. Go on.
Kintu said. That
because people have called in.
Yes, I'm going to answer them. Don't worry.
Go on, sir.
And the method of answering is entirely on me.
Go on, sir.
When you asked him about what Brigadier Tumukunde and General Muntu said, rather Muhwezi said, then he said it is the opinion. Exactly, that's what we want. We want people's opinion to be respected. Can he tell us, why was Brigadier Tumukunde arrested for airing out his opinion? This is on record. Now, he's comparing Edmond with President Museveni, a revolutionary. The two are not supposed to be comparable. You can't compare milk with chili. It doesn't work. We should be seeing a completely different reform from Idi Amin. You can't do that. Now, this rioters and demonstration, we have said it time and time again that ours is not a riot. Ours is peaceful demonstration, and we have been peaceful until the time when the police engage us and they start tear gassing us. That's when the confusion begins. And even at that time, we keep saying, please don't do that. The demonstration is allowed under the Constitution. But when he is talking about a political space, how do you have political space and when I'm walking, just walking and I'm being tear gassed?
Well, it depends on what style of walking.
Yes. Am I allowed to do window shopping?
Go on.
Yes. Am I allowed to go and
buy bananas
from anywhere in any of these markets? So when I'm there, I must be tear gassed because it is the choice. That's what I can afford. I cannot afford Charlton. What I can afford is in Chikubo. And when I'm going there, they say, how can Kazoora be walking to Chikubo?
When he has a car.
Yes. How do you know? You see my car, probably even I don't have the fuel. So what space is he talking about?
Yes. We'll answer some other questions as we go on. Mr. Nyago.
Edmond, you know, even the listeners, as you could hear from their from their orientation, were very supportive of my side of the debate.
Yes.
So which means that Ugandans are not can't be kidded all the time.
Right.
Now look, I can assure you, Edmond, and the listeners, that to show you how democratic Uganda is under President Museveni, F4C, as it's operating now, can only operate in Uganda.
Yes.
Try it. Try their methods in any other country in the region. Try their methods in any other democracy in the world, and you will see what would happen to you. For example, get hoodlums, go to, say, Oxford Street, and block Oxford Street in London without the authorities allowing you to do that. In any case, you can't go to Oxford Street and demonstrate there. Or on Pennsylvania Avenue in Washington. You get hoodlums who have smoked bangi and so forth, stoning policemen, and you block a national major road artery, as Mr. Besigye did. For about 2 hours, he blocked the artery next to the only national referral hospital we have in this world. How many mothers who are going for labor, for their labor, were inconvenienced? Are they not Ugandans? Or do we have rights in grades, that Besigye's rights, because he was being filmed by CNN and Al Jazeera, and because he's the leader of an opposition party, his rights supersede those of mothers who are going for labor? How many students who are going to Kitale Secondary School for their exams were stopped? He blocked a national artery near a major security installation, CMI, near just try that in the USA or any other democracy, and you will see what will happen to you. And Besigye went back home and slept. And then the other time, he blocked the only road we have to the only airport we have for an entire day, stoning visiting heads of state. You try that in any other country. Try that in any other country in the region or in the West, and you would see what would happen to you. So this FOC with their antics of calling riots, demonstrations, can only take place under the tolerance and civilized leadership of President Museveni in this globe.
Honorable Kazoora, who's banning markets? Some people think it's the FDC.
No, before I go to the markets, when Nyago started, he said we are going to have amicable discussion.
Yes.
And I thought we were going to say the truth. When he's talking of this 28th attack on Dr. Besigye at Murago roundabout,
yes,
I told you I'm in charge of security. I followed Dr. Besigye. He drove from his home in Kasangati. When he reached Kubiri, what is known as Mulago, Grace to Diagmanawe, assistant of police, yes. He said you are not going to you imagine,
you can't go through one
you can't go through one day. And the Besigye said, I'm going to my bank, which is in one day. Then he said to Diagmanawe, said, for that matter, use the Murago roundabout. Besigye Kintu, Besigye obeyed. He used that road. When he reached Murago roundabout, they blocked him and said, now you are not going to Wandega, to your bank, use Furure Road
and go somewhere
and go to Najanankumi. Besigye said, I'm not going to Najanankumi.
Yes.
I'm going to draw my money. The bank is there.
Maybe buy some tomatoes for the house, yes, and go back to Kasanga.
Now, that's the political space Kintu is talking about. That I must carry my bank from Wandega and take it to Jinja so that I don't access the center of town. Entebbe. Where was Besigye coming from?
He was coming from Nairobi.
Why? Why did he go to Nairobi?
Went to hospital.
The Chitus had blinded him. And he was actually supposed to return
the previous
day. And he was stopped. I fought all these things. Now, they were embarrassed because passengers had said, now, if you are doing this, we are not going to use Kenya Airways anymore. So the airways thought they were going to lose business, and unfortunately, he had to come on the day the swearing in was there. I went to Kaihura's office and said, please, we want to cooperate with the police.
Yes.
And he gave me Francis Rego. We went to Entebbe as we had agreed with the police.
Yes.
When we reached at a place called Chituboru, where the lake comes near the lake,
yes,
Rego was got out of the command of the operation.
They gave it somebody.
They gave it to a military boy called Kakonge.
Yes. That's
when hell began. Started beating people, shooting people, right? And that caused the stampede. So it was not Besigye Nyago. Please, own your actions.
All right, give us your final word as we go, Mr. Nyago.
My final actions are that
final words.
Whatever I've said is known by most Ugandans, and that's why most Ugandans have been supporting my side of the debate.
Yes.
But which must have been it?
Those have called it. Now, Mr. Kazoora, please, you said you are a Democrat. So please, now.
No, I can't be a Democrat on life.
Please. I don't speak when you are. Please. Now, the important point is that there is no crisis, there is no standoff, and attempts to mimic what is taking place in different environments with different history and whatever won't be replicated here. People should go on with their business. The country, it has never been brighter.
Should plant their crops.
It has never been. It has never been. We aren't only just peasants. It has never been brighter in Uganda's history. So let us get the cow by the horns. Everything is more or less in order. I mean, perfection's in heaven, but everything is more or less in order within human limitation. And I mean, it's so bright for everybody. Let's make the best out of it.
We have to go on that note. Things are sour, like they say in Swahili.
No, but,
thank you. We have to go maybe another time.
There is no crisis. Now, I want to ask him as we close. If there is no crisis, why is this panic? That a woman is walking, a woman, just like Ingrid Turnawi, walking, and you attack a woman.
Thank you very much, Dad. Hon John Kazoora, FDC Secretary for Defense, also a Bushville veteran. Thank you for coming to Spectrum, sir. Mr. Nyago, Deputy Principal Private Secretary to the President. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond Kizito. Spectrum will return tomorrow. Up next, though, is the news in English. Stay tuned.
Promotion. Kutoka MTN. We send million shillings every day for 90